Hello everyone and welcome to SwitchUp. Today we've got another one of our new series, our new sales series, where we both pick 5 games that are currently on sale and just have a quick chat about them and let you know why it is we're recommending them. But the quirk is that they have to be at least 50% off.
Exactly right, yeah. A little chin wag about 5 games that we've bought on sale in the past or played together and that are on ridiculously cheap prices. Do save yourself 10% on any of these titles and your eShop games in general by buying vouchers from our website, switchup.gg. Using code SwitchUp, we get a little kickback, and that's all officially endorsed by Nintendo, not like many of the key sites. And we really appreciate it. So, what are the 10 games that are currently 50% or less? Let's find out.
Lovely. Right, I'll start then, Mark, and my first one is actually 95% off. I think it might be the biggest discount of the lot, and that's This War of Mine, which is a game that I have played many times over the years. I played it on the PS4, played it of course on the Switch, reviewed it on the Switch, and it's quite possibly the most poignant game I've ever played, or the most upset I've felt playing a game, because you take on the role of civilians during a war, and you have to basically try to get them through each day that involves their day-to-day life, living in a house, trying to create resources that they'd need, but then you have to go out on runs at night and try to get the bits and the resources, food of course, things like that you need. And doing so means that you'll have to make some very hard decisions. Who do you keep on watching the house? Do you let them all sleep? Do you have one stay up all night? Each of your characters has a trait, and those traits need to be put to good use. And there are times where your characters won't survive, and it really is quite hard hitting when that happens. And for this price, as long as you're happy is a strange word to use for this game, but as long as it sounds like an interesting premise, this is an absolute steal.
Yeah, it's a great game. 95% off, and it's one of those at the moment that is so close to home. I should imagine it's even more poignant as it stands.
Absolutely, and it really does. Any other war game that you play, you kind of enjoy playing it, whereas this one, you don't enjoy it, but you do get very engrossed in it, and it's a very, very clever game for that,
Alright, so next up then we've got Bravely Default 2. Now I reviewed this for us on the channel, but it's an interesting one really, because I think there's some mechanics that I never fully understood. And obviously you're a bit of a veteran of the games. You kind of spoke to me about it afterwards, and I think I never fully grasped the importance of the job system.
Yeah, I mean, this game, for me, I love this game for 2 reasons. One is the job system that we'll speak about in a moment, but or the asterisks as they're called. But the first is of course the Bravely Default system itself, whereby you can attempt or choose to take all of your turns at once by going brave, or you can choose not to use a move, which is called defaulting, and kind of using a mixture of those two mechanics or those two strategies will see you through some very difficult battles. But you mentioned the job system, and what's great about that is that each job that you take on has a perk or a skill that's assigned to it, or a number of skills actually, that you will unlock as you progress and level up. And what you can start to do is you can pick and choose some of those skills that you like and add them to your character, and you can have a main job and a secondary job, and you can really make some interesting classes. And the way that you do that really does change the way that you play the rest of the game. When I completed this, it took me about 65 hours, and one of the classes that I ended up using quite near the end of the game is one I hadn't even thought of early on, because I didn't really need it, and I had to rethink my strategy later on. And I love the fact that it doesn't necessarily just rely on grinding. There is some grinding there, but it is very much also about strategy,
Absolutely, yeah. And thank you for doing my game, because because you've just got a good. I mean, you 65 hours in it, That's really good. Cheers, thanks for that one. Nice one, Glenn.
No worries. Me again then. Right, my next one is called Pumpkin Jack. I'll talk about this one next, which is 60% off at the moment, which equates in the UK to about £10. Obviously regional equivalent. This one is only in the UK, EU and Australia, as far as I'm aware. Now I've picked this one because it's a 3D platformer. Obviously it's October, coming towards Halloween, and this game is very appropriate in that respect. But it's a very fun throwback to the kind of the 3D platformers of, I would say, kind of the PS2, GameCube, original Xbox era. It reminds me of that sort of style. It's a good game. You unlock a new weapon each time you defeat a boss, so you've got some variety in there as you move on. At times you will take your head off, the pumpkin head off, and you have to control just the head, and that makes for some interesting puzzles as you try to make a path for the rest of you to get through. And it's one of those games where I'm quite shocked it doesn't have a physical release. You know, I would have expected one of the small print run companies to have picked this one up, and as far as I know, to the best of my knowledge, they haven't. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong there. So if you are interested in this game, especially in this season, this is probably your best bet.
Yeah, brilliant. This is another one that was, I think it was a single developer, Nicholas Masonier. And
yes, I believe you're right.
It's really impressive what he's done. But like you say, very, very old school in one sense, with air quotes. But
yes,
yeah, enjoyable and fun and well worth that. Okay, so my next one then is one that I do know quite a bit more about. Is Toejam Early back in business, I think it's called.
Back in the groove, I think.
Back in the groove. Now, like yourself, I'm sure, we played Toejam Early back in the day. Yep. And to be honest, when I first played this, I was a little bit disappointed. And it's weird. I guess they've got a difficult position because you're trying to make it appeal to the original fans, but you're also trying to make it new. And it felt like it was a bit too similar to the original game. And I kind of blasted through it, and I felt like I was maybe wanting something a little bit more, and especially at its launch price. Like, I can't remember exactly what it was, but I do remember thinking, hang on, that's just too expensive for what it is. But currently it's 87% off, taking it down to like, I don't know, like £1, something like that. And in offline, you can have up to 4 of you in co-op. That's where it really shines. And, you know, just for a bit of like a nostalgia trip, just playing essentially the original Toejam Early with a lick of paint and some makeup. Yeah, I'd say that's worth £1 or a couple of quid, you know?
Yeah, I would say so. I've played this game. I've finished this game. And I agree with you. It's my biggest issue with it was that when you play the original, you do move quite slow, but so do the enemies. Whereas in this one, you still move relatively slow, albeit you can switch characters and some are slightly faster. But the enemies seem to move much quicker, and it does become slightly frustrating. It's doable still, don't get me wrong, but this is the point of this series, isn't it? This is a flaw to a game that is almost negated by the fact it's so much cheaper, you know?
Absolutely, yeah. And it's one of those, like I say, when you're playing in co-op, like when you were a kid, playing with your brothers or sisters, whatever, you don't really care about any of that. It's just the fun of running around these weird little, like, I don't know what they are. Like, they're not really worlds. They look like maps zoomed out, don't they?
Yeah, and it does retain a lot of that charm of the original game, doesn't it?
Definitely. So yeah, that's my one. 87% off. Well worth it.
Nice.
Hey! Out of the way!
Okay, my next one is a beat 'em up called The Takeover, which is 80% off as it currently stands. Now, as far as I can remember, this game came out, if not the same week, it was close to the release of Streets of Rage 4, and I do believe that it got overlooked. With that in mind, I certainly overlooked it, I must say. But this is a very good beat 'em up. Very good beat 'em up, and well worth anyone's time and money, especially at this price. What again, you know, I kind of maybe bring a slightly different perspective to these videos to you, because I do think of the physical side of it a lot more.
Yeah.
And this, I was always waiting for a physical release for this one, and when it did get one, because I had heard there was one in the works, but it's actually limited run games, and obviously being over here in the UK, that's not quite as accessible as it would be to Americans, of course. So for me, you know, I'm going to ditch that plan of getting a physical and pick it up for this ridiculously cheap price, you know?
Absolutely. So this one compared to Streets of Rage, what are the major differences?
I mean, a lot of people would tell you that this game's better than Streets of Rage 4. I'm not sure I would go as far as that, but I can see where they're coming from. I can most certainly see where they're coming from. And it does have some interesting parts where you kind of play almost like mini games that relate back to kind of classic old arcade games, which just mixes it up a little bit as well. It's a very good game, and like I say, I mean, over here it's £3.50 odd, you know, it's just a no-brainer.
Lovely. All right, brilliant. Well, I'm going to tell you about one that I have a feeling you might not have heard of before. This is potentially a hidden gem. Have you heard of a game called Blackguards 2?
No, I haven't.
There we go. Happy days. So I don't know why. I think I played this one. It was for one of our little series. I can't remember what it was. I don't know if it was our Interesting Games one. It might have been. But it's essentially a isometric. You're going to hear all the tick boxes of things I like. It's a tactical turn-based kind of isometric game that's split in kind of an RPG fashion. But it's very interesting. Like, you start off playing as essentially. I don't know. It's one of those where you could say one thing and spoil it. You start off by playing as a very important person in the story who gets cast down, basically thrown in a dungeon, and she gradually loses her mind. And it's filled with these hideous spider creatures, and she like almost becomes one of them. Basically, there's this thing that anyone that gets thrown into this pit, like, it's the end of them. Basically, like, they lose their mind and it's over. But she's there for like hundreds of years, gradually becomes like basically like the queen of the spiders, and then you escape, and she starts to build up this massive army, and it's very cool. Like, every time you go through a story segment, it'll be to add a new commander to your ranks, but to add them, you'll generally have to fight them in turn-based combat with story reasons, with reasons. And it's really nice. It's got really nice momentum. The way it kind of goes from this very fast start sequence where you're like, wow, this woman's a badass, to getting chucked into that thing, and you're there for a long time, even in game time, to thinking like, what on earth's going on here? But then that like rise from the ashes is very cool. Yeah, so I was really impressed, and I hadn't played the original. It was back on PC, so I didn't know anything about it. It's published by Daedalic as well, and developed by them, so it kind of gives you an idea of the pedigree.
Yeah, for sure.
But obviously you're recruiting those members as you go along. I think there's you have up to 20 of them in your army, like 20 different characters with their units. And in terms of combat, it's tactical turn-based. It's pretty standard. Each of your characters has abilities, but it has the RPG elements of being able to deck them out in different items and gear and stuff. It's brilliant. It's way better than the attention that it's had on Switch. And I mean, at the moment, unfortunately, US people, this is only available on sale in the UK. But even at its full price, they knocked the full price in half. So I think it was originally like $30. And then they took it down to $15 just because no one was covering it. And it's half price in the UK, £6. Absolute bargain. You're looking at about 20, 30 hours of gameplay.
Nice. Sounds good.
Yeah.
It's always good to hear about one you've not even heard of.
Definitely.
Right, my next one then is called Outbuddies DX, which is a Metroidvania that came out. I believe it came out on PC initially, and then obviously made its way over to the Switch in DX form with a few glitches or bugs haven't been squashed, and some updated visuals and whatnot. And it's fairly standard in terms of what Metroidvanias do, but what it does very well. And of course, at the minute, I believe it's 70% off, and it's well worth it's worth the original price, to be fair, but it's certainly worth this one. And it does a few interesting little bits in that you have a robot friend, if you like, or ally with you that kind of flies about your head, called Buddy, and Buddy has certain skills that you have to kind of take on the role of the robot sometimes and unlock doors or whatever to allow you to make progress. And you can actually play it into player with one of you controlling the character and one controlling the robot, so it's not full on co-op, but it has an element of it if you're happy to play that way. And it's just a very solid Metroidvania. It has a kind of an 8-bit style to it in terms of its visuals, but it almost reminds me of like a souped up Spectrum game. The Spectrum kind of had the black backgrounds with the yellows and the reds and the turquoises, and it's not that, don't get me wrong, but it kind of looks, if you could take that and almost modernize it, it has a nice fusion of a few different styles to it, which I really enjoyed. And again, perhaps it's one that people haven't necessarily heard of, and if you're looking for a Metroidvania fix for £4.50 or whatever it is, or your regional equivalent, definitely worth it for that price.
This looks really cool. I'm literally just looking at some images now, and I can see what you mean about the fusion, like the
it's kind of, like at first I just wanted to call it 8-bit, and then you look at more, and it is, but it kind of isn't. It just has something else to it that it did remind me of the Spectrum in some ways.
Yeah, this I might put this on my wish list. This looks decent. All right, brilliant. Okay, so my next one is one that we've both played. It's Titan Quest, if you remember, when we played that in co-op.
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Very, very good series. It's funny, I've actually was clearing out my loft the other day and I found the original game still in its wrapper.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I don't know why, because for me that's very unusual. But it's a really nice, old school, I guess you could call it, it's almost a mixture of like a Diablo and a classic RPG. Top-down perspective, ancient Greece, or Egypt and Asia, kind of spread over those areas. You know, everything you'd expect. Click on an enemy, auto-attack, adding loads of new items and gear and things, and loads of quest lines. Now, I believe this one has online multiplayer as well, for up to 6 players. And there were a few bugs. Well, that's an understatement. There were a lot of bugs at launch. There were a few glitches and things. But what was really interesting about this one was that they added in DLC. I mean, you're looking at, like, I'm going to go out on a limb, like 20 years after it was originally launched, to suddenly add DLC on the Nintendo Switch.
Oh, wow, okay.
It's so strange. So there are 2 large DLC packs, which are currently also 65% off. You've got Titan Quest Ragnarok and Titan Quest Atlantis, and they're excellent. Right. So I would really recommend, you know, if you've played the original Titan Quest, maybe pick it up on sale at the moment for like, I think it's a tenner, which is a little bit more expensive than some of these other games. But buying the whole lot for 20 quid with the 2 expansions is well worth it. It's a really nice trip back down memory lane. And you realise that actually, do you know what, some of these older games had it right back then. Yeah,
absolutely. It's interesting how many of those old, dungeon crawlers, I suppose you'd class it as, wouldn't you, have made it to the Switch or to modern consoles, isn't it?
Yeah, they've held up really well.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, my last one then, possibly the most expensive, but I would still say is a good price. This is a game called Root Film, which is 55% off, which equates to about £15.
Yep.
Again, or your regional equivalent, of course. But this is a visual novel, which I played and really enjoyed. And the basic concept is that you are a movie director. Mm-hmm. And you are chosen to reboot an old TV show that was cancelled under mysterious circumstances. And you kind of, as you start to film this reboot, you know, obviously you have your main actors and actresses, and you start going out on scouting missions for locations and whatnot. And as you're doing all this with your cameraman and your lead actress and your assistant, people start dying, and it's almost like this curse of the old show is returning, you know. And I won't say any more than that in terms of the story, but it is a very good narrative. It's very typically Japanese in that it kind of has these horrific moments that are then broken up by quite light-hearted moments, and that tonal shift is a bit jarring sometimes, but that is kind of standard for this sort of game. And it also has this interesting mechanic whereby you will interview people at times and you need to try and kind of trip them up on what they've said to prove that they're not telling the truth. And it reminded me in those small segments of like the Ace Attorney games, you know? Yeah.
So it's got go on.
Sorry, mate, go on.
So it's got like detective elements to it, has it?
It kind of has, yeah. You'll be searching the scenes and finding evidence, and then obviously using that evidence to then speak to the appropriate people and try and move the story on. And it's just I really enjoyed the story. And like I say, £15, I would say it's worth that price. Me personally, being a physical collector, I'd be looking for a physical for that price. But if you're not so bothered about that, then it's going to give you a good 25 hours worth of fun for that price.
Brilliant. So you basically kind of you said something in there that was really interesting. You said about the there's a Japanese almost preference for large tonal shifts in mood, and I think actually that carries off in a lot of their JRPGs as well. Maybe that's why they're so successful, because they go from those really almost like farcically light-hearted moments to those, like, you know, someone dies or something really opposite, and maybe that's what they excel at, and maybe that's why those games are so popular. I think
and it's especially when it does it the other way around. It goes from a very sad moment or quite shocking moment to that kind of light-hearted approach soon after. It is obviously as a Westerner, it is quite jarring at times, but I also find it quite an interesting window into another culture, you know, and another way of storytelling.
Definitely. I think I'm getting a bit red herringy here, but obviously there are those people that are absolutely obsessed with Japanese culture. They're called weebs, right? That's what a weeb is? Did you know that?
I don't know. If that's true, then I've learned something
short
today.
for weebo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
It looks decent. That.
いいだろう。いつもの格好で十分だと思うぞ。
まあ、ヨレヨレのスーツよりはマシですけどね。
All right, my last one then, before I carry on just waffling. I'm reaching waffle age, aren't I? Is West of Loathing. Have you played this one?
I've played it briefly. It's like the stick people one, isn't it?
Yeah, the stick people westerner, which from asymmetric games. I wasn't expecting anything from this. This was one where you look at the art and I thought, yeah, this is going to be fun, a fun review, not. And playing it, I was just incredible. It starts out like on this little carriage, and within the first few lines of dialogue, you realise how well written it is. And it's just incredibly funny, although it might not look like it. This is essentially like an RPG. It's got turn-based combat in there. It's got side questing. It's got all the standard things, but with an art style that's, whether you love it or you hate it, it's certainly unique. I highly, highly recommend this. It's one of the most entertaining, I guess, very, very funny games that I've played. And it has those quirky little things I think we spoke about the other day in older games, where they put things in that were essentially pointless, but they're just fun. They're just to spice things up. You can get 50 different hats in the game. I mean, totally pointless, absolutely pointless. but you end up looking for them for no reason other than you want a new trilby. Yeah.
Who wouldn't?
Who wouldn't? So highly recommend this one. I would say go and watch the full review of it on the channel. But for that price, I mean, 50% off, £5.50. I just know how many people look at this and go, nah,
Yeah, looks can be quite deceiving, can't they, in that respect?
Yeah, but yeah, it's very good game, well worth it. And that essentially takes us, I think, doesn't it, Glenn, to the end of this sales video.
It does. That's your 10, yeah. That's it. Lovely job. So yeah, again, hope you enjoyed it. Please do let us know of any games you've picked up recently on sale that you would recommend. It's always difficult to try and pick 10 because some are going to run out in a couple of days, some are exclusive to certain regions. So, we've tried to give you a broad range for a number of different genres. But yeah, let us know of any that you've picked up too.
Brilliant. And if you want to save 10% on any of your eShop games or anything really, because there's PlayStation on there and Xbox, use code SwitchUp over at switchup.gg at the checkout and save yourself 10%. Those vouchers are delivered instantly to you. We've also started channel membership if you're interested in that. I know I'm doing a big waffle, but if you're interested in that, you get a little emoji that gradually changes to like the super switch up emoji after a few months. So there you go. All that's left to say is thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed the channel, stick around, and for all things Switch all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers guys. See ya.